Welcome to Steps Forward with Ricky, a weekly walking podcast designed to help you take steps forward in your life and your day. Hello, happy Monday. You know the drill. You should be walking. If you don't know the drill, well, you should be walking. That is what we do on this podcast. And it is episode 18. That is so wild because that's, it's a lot of episodes and a lot of time and consistency and commitment, things that I am usually scared of. And it's a good reminder and good evidence, right? Because sometimes we need evidence that we can do things and that we can become certain things and that we can stick with certain things. And episode 18 is evidence that I can show up. I can walk into the studio. I can record. I can record when I'm going through a breakup. I can record when I'm fighting, overcoming addiction. I can record on good days. I can record on bad days. I can record on the days I don't want to come in here. I can show up, whatever's happening in my life. And sometimes we need proof that we can show up. And sometimes the best proof that we can get is just by showing up, right? I mean, maybe you're showing up for this podcast today. Maybe you're like, I got to get my steps in. I got to walk, or I'm going through a rough time, so I got to put one foot in front of the other. Well, whatever it is, if you show up for this podcast every single week and you go for a walk with me, you should be so proud of yourself because that means that you have walked with me for 18 episodes. How fucking cool is that? I mean, if you weren't a person that walked before, well, you can consider yourself a walker now. I know that's like not that cool, but I think it's cool. And I think that when we show up, we grow up and we prove to ourselves that we can do it. And so I'm very proud of myself. And I hope that you're proud of yourself for just tuning in week after week and putting on your gym shoes and putting one foot in front of the other. And we really are doing this together. And I was just thinking in the car as I was driving over here, there's definitely been weeks that I really honestly didn't feel like podcasting. And if I hadn't had to show up, I don't know that I would have showed up. And it's so interesting to me because I thought that this pattern of mine was just exclusive to certain things of my life where I would get really excited about something and then I would lose that momentum and then I would quit, or I would try something else, or I would just lose that consistency, right? But I love my podcast. Maybe you can relate to this. I love my podcast so much. I really do. I'm so grateful for it, and I love marketing it, and I love putting it out there, and I love it. And even though I love it, and might be the part that you can connect to, even though I love it, there have definitely been times where I'm like, I don't really feel like this. Or how long am I going to do the podcast for? Or is this working? Or I don't know, is it ever going to be what I want it to be? All of these thoughts that run through my head. And I realized that this is a pattern in my life. This is a Ricky pattern. Maybe it's a you pattern. And it's a pattern where I do something and I get bored real fucking fast. Or I get destructive. Or I just lose that fire. And because I'm ADHD, and maybe you are too, maybe you're ADD, I don't know, whatever you are, maybe you're like, oh, wow. No wonder I start something, get excited, and then don't feel like doing it. Or I slowly stop posting on Instagram, or I slowly stop going to the gym, or I change this job and this thing. And the best part about all of this is not that maybe you're wired that way or I'm wired this way, is that becoming self-aware of the things that you do is exactly how you change them, right? So I recognize, and it's taken me a very long time, I recognize that I'm ADHD, I'm energetic, I get bored easily, I'm totally a multi-passionate entrepreneur who likes to dabble in a lot of different things, who has different talents. And when I'm doing just one thing, I get anxious. And I get a little like a box starts to close in on me. And so I know that when I start to get anxious now, or I start to get bored of my podcast, or bored of creating videos, or bored of mentoring or whatever it is that I think I'm getting bored of, it's not because I'm actually bored. It's because I just need to either show up no matter what, or I need to add something else, like change the scenery, take a day off, go on a little trip, maybe even just talk about how I'm feeling. I don't need to stop it or give up. You don't need to stop it or give up. You just need to evaluate and say, okay, is this a pattern? Like I'm 18 episodes into my podcast and I'm starting to I was feeling bored this past 2 weeks, or I was feeling like something was stopping me from like promoting it as much. And I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm just over it. And I'm like, you're not fucking over it, Ricky. That's insane. Like you're insane. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. But when I say like, oh my God, you're right, these are conversations I actually have with myself. Like I literally had to say, Ricky, you're not over your podcast. You fucking love your podcast. Like don't be a crazy person. Don't be a destructive person. Right? And obviously some situations, maybe you are over that. Maybe it is time to move forward, right? Like in the last, couple months, there are situations that I was involved in, but not just for a month. Like I was involved with them for a year or 2 years that I did have to let go of, but that was different. And I think it's important to know the difference of, am I bored? Am I misaligned? Am I going through this pattern that I always go through? Because there is a difference. And I was telling this woman that I'm starting to work with, who actually, this is hilarious. She found me through the podcast. She found me under the hashtag smoking pot, or like stop smoking pot. She's amazing. She's an angel. And I'm starting to work with her, and we're working on some life mentoring and some business stuff. And, she said to me, I was listening to your podcast, and, that's like, I felt like I could relate to all the things that you said. And I said to her, like, that's really great. And we were chit-chatting, and she has all these different things that she wants to work on. And she was saying how she hates being put into like a box, right? Like when someone says like, what do you do for a living, or who are you? She says she feels like she has to say everything about herself, like in that moment, so that person knows everything about her. And I feel like whenever I get bored, or whenever I want to like forget about the thing that I'm doing or try something else, it's like there's a part of me that feels like I'm giving up certain parts of who I am just by doing this one thing right now, right? And so when she said that to me, because I've said that, obviously, if you're an avid listener, like how I feel about being put into any box. But when she said that to me, it was the first time that I wasn't saying that to somebody about myself. She reflected it back to me like, oh, Ricky, this is what I feel like too. When someone says like, you're just a hairstylist. Like, do you just do hair? Because she's a hairstylist. And she's like, yeah, I do hair, but like, I also am really good at this. I'm also really good at this. I also do this. I also do that. And she's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And I think that it's messaging we get when we're younger, like somewhere in our life that either says like, you can't be all of you and be successful, or you have to do this way, or this way. Or, sometimes we think that if people don't know all of us in that moment all the time, then we're not being true to ourselves. But this is what I realized. It's great. You're going to really like this one, especially if you're multi-passionate and you struggle with this and you get bored and all the things. So this is what I've realized. I can't be all of me all the time, right? Like I can't create a video for a company and podcast at the same time. I literally can't. I can't podcast and do a FaceTime with a client and coach them about their life. I can't express myself on Instagram and sit down and, edit a video. I can't speak on a stage and podcast at the same time, right? Like what I realized was that I actually can't be and bring all of every aspect in me to everything that I do, because it's not possible. But it doesn't make me any less me. So me podcasting doesn't make me any less of a creator, which doesn't make me any less of a speaker, which doesn't make me any less of a person who's expressed themselves or a person who mentors people. And so when I get bored now, or I don't want to show up for my podcast, or I want to, forget something and be like, I'm over that thing, I really try now to sit and be like, okay, do you feel confined? Is this a pattern? Is this a Ricky pattern? Like, okay, it's been a couple months now of doing this thing. Like, is this where you usually get that itch? Do you think that maybe, you just need to work on something else for right now, just like for a day. Like I try to be self-aware, because when you're self-aware, you can start to change the pattern. And I don't know if you can relate to that, because maybe you're just the kind of person, and this is so great, and there's a lot of me that kind of wishes I could be like this, that is really good with just doing one thing, or that you don't get bored easily. I mean, that's amazing. But maybe you have this in other areas of your life, like with working out. Maybe you're doing something for a while and you get motivated and you're super excited, and then you start to fall off short, and then you're like, I don't want to go to that gym today. I'll go tomorrow. And you don't go tomorrow, you don't go the next day, and then it becomes this thing. And I don't know. I think it's like recognizing what's a pattern, what's like out of alignment, and then what's destructive, right? Because it might be a combination of both. Like me not promoting my podcast for 2 weeks is fucking destructive. Like just truly destructive. Because like, look at me now. You hear my voice. Like you obviously know that I love to be here. Like I love my podcast. So why would I like not want to promote it for a couple of weeks? If I don't promote my podcast, no one's listening to it. And I don't like that. And yeah, I could be bored a little bit, but instead of stopping it and being like, damn, I don't like my podcast anymore, I'm like, okay, Ricky, take a step back, pause. What is going on? I don't know. It's just something that I'm really, really, really trying to be aware of, because I don't want to feel unfulfilled. I don't want to start and stop a million different things. I don't want to overcommit. I don't want to look flaky. I mean, you don't either. Who the hell wants to look that way? But I think when we're unaware of who we are and what we do, you stay in a place where you're like always doing the same shit over and over again. And you know, I've received this messaging when I was younger that I like was too much. And I think that's like stuck with me. And so I've always tried to, in some ways, I've been like destructive with my success, because I realize, or I've thought that if I do this, I'm going to be too successful. I'll be too much. I'll share too much. I'll do this. I'll do that. And so I think a lot of it has to do with like being destructive and keeping myself small. It's like, if I don't promote my podcast can't grow. Where does that leave me? Then I'm not going to be too much, right? Like I'm not going to have too much success. I'll just stay neutral. And that's not what I want. I don't want that. I definitely don't want that. And it's like my video stuff, right? Like I loved creating videos for companies. Am I going to do it the rest of my life? I have no fucking idea. But I love to be creative. I love to be an ideas person. But if I don't put myself out there and go after it, even if I don't know if it's the end all be all, then it's like a form of destructive. It's like, why don't you want to just do it and see where it goes? Like you're good at it. And I think there's just like this messaging that I'm personally working through of like, you can do all these different little things and you don't have to give up right away when you're bored. And, you know, a stumble is not a fall. And just because you're not excited about it right now doesn't mean that it's like you don't have to do it. And I think what helps me, at least, I don't know if you can relate to this, is that me having my hands in a few different things actually keeps me more centered, because I don't feel as anxious about having just to like promote one thing or do one thing. So I've just been thinking about that, because I know that the part of me I've been resisting the most is the part of me that is me the most, which is just someone who really might always dabble in a few different things. And that being bored one day doesn't mean it's over. And that I don't have to be destructive to keep myself small. It's like the smoking. That was what I would do when I would get bored. I mean, I would get high. I was just like, get high. And because I've taken that away from myself, it's like when I didn't want to promote my podcast last week, my first thought was like, damn, it'd be really nice to smoke, right? And I'm obviously not smoking, don't worry. But then I sat down and I was like, well, why do you want to smoke? Why do you want to promote your podcast? Like, what does it matter if you're bored? Can't you be bored and promote your podcast? Like, can't you do this and that? Why do we have to choose one feeling or the other? Like, what if we were just like, okay, I am bored and I'm going to still put myself out there. I am having anxiety, and I'm still going to show up. I am unmotivated and I'm still going to go to the gym. Like, why do we have to choose? And everyone's different. So everything that I say to you on this podcast is just, first of all, literally coming out of my mouth from my mind in this moment. Like, I'm always processing things as I'm speaking to you. That's why they might sound a little crazy, because I walk in here, I make this shit up as I go. And this is sort of where I process my thoughts, is like with the headphones on and talking like this. You're like, yeah, we can tell. But that's okay, because it helps me get my thoughts out and helps me understand them more. And maybe it helps you realize that we're all just fucking figuring this out in real time. I mean, the truth of the matter is like, that is the truth. And the biggest thing I want you to take from this episode is that becoming self-aware of your patterns without judgment, without like, damn, I wish it wasn't like that, or why am I like that? Like, when you say, why am I like that? You're automatically putting like a separation between you and who you are, right? So like, why do I get bored? I can't not be that person, but what I do with that feeling is different, right? Like, why do I have such an addictive personality? I don't fucking know. But being an addict is different than having an addictive personality. So recognize where these things come up for you. Do you get bored after a couple weeks? Is it after a few months? Do you feel like doing one job isn't enough for you? Do you feel like you need some passion projects to like level out the playing field? Do you feel like it's after 6 months that you get bored? You know, whatever it is for you, bored, anxious, I want you to take a step back and be like, okay, is this a pattern? Is this something I always do? Or is this not working for me anymore? Because when I realized during the podcast that I was doing that again, I was like, oh my God, because I love the podcast and I chose the podcast. I created the podcast. So when I found myself being destructive with it, it made me realize like, damn, this is a pattern. And I don't have to choose so many things anymore of like this or that. I can do the podcast and I can do this, then I can do this and I can do that. And I can show up even when I feel like not showing up. And I trust myself enough to know when the right time is to end something now. But it took me creating a podcast to realize that I had a really bad pattern of like, I'm out. And to be quite honest with you, you hold me accountable. You, whoever you are, wherever you're listening to this, I show up for you. When I can't show up for me, I show up for you. And because I pay my producer. No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, I have accountability on all fronts. My producer holds me accountable. Brandon is his name. You hold me accountable because I have to release an episode every Monday. And I hold myself accountable for you and for me. And this is the first time in my life where I have felt that accountability, like it's sort of bigger than me. And I don't want to fuck it up. And I'm trying to apply that every other area of my life now, with the smoking, with my, being an entrepreneur, with the way that I make money, with all these different things in my life. I'm trying to remember that if I can't show up for me, I'm going to show up for my future self, or I'm going to show up for you, or I'm just going to fucking show up and just see what happens. So that's my episode this week. And that's my lesson to you is, where are the patterns? Can you take a step back to take a step forward? Do you always do this? Is this something that you've been doing your whole life? Or are you out of alignment? Is it time to move forward? Become self-aware enough to know what the answer is. Thanks for walking with me. Thanks for talking with me. Make sure you drink some water and share this podcast episode if you resonated with it. Feel free to DM me, leave me a review on Apple Podcast. You have to write the review. You can't just like leave a rating. And, if you're ever looking in your life to make a change or take a step forward, I am offering different services now to help people move through whatever it is that's weighing on them, because we all deserve to take a step forward and we don't have to do it alone. So you can email me, DM me, reach out. I will see you next Monday. That's the ending.